Hello, Sula here from MistyHilltops.com. Thanks for stopping by. In this video, I'm putting together the cover for the 6x6 mini album that I'm creating for the December Daily 2022. And obviously this album can be used for any theme, but I'm creating a Christmas album. So now I'm going to work with a large scale project. So I can promise already that at some point I'll be working off screen. I'm pretty sure. I hope that won't happen too much, and when it happens that you can still get what I'm doing here. It's just I don't want to put the camera further away. And this is a mini album that I share as a freebie in several parts on my blog, MistyHilltops.com. But I took inspiration from a video by Laurie's Crafty Creation on YouTube, and I'll link you up with her video in the description box below. Her mini album her mini albums are cut by hand, and I decided to use her inspiration to create silhouette cut files. In the end, there's a lot more that goes into my albums than the one she shows, and I'm creating everything as a silhouette cut file that then I can share as freebie. So as you can already see, a few of the cuts are really big, like this piece here is a really big cut, and like it won't fit on a normal 12 by 12 silhouette cut mat. It's wider than that. But it does fit on a 12 by 24 cut mat for silhouette. But if you don't want to invest in a big cutting mat for silhouette, you can just download the files, and they come with all the measurements that you can just use to follow and to trim everything down to the way that you need it. Okay, so even if you don't want to get a big cutting mat, all you need is measuring tape, and you can create a big big paper project like this, just trimming it by hand. So let's get started. The cut file for the cover that you can download as freebie from MistyHilltops.com comes with all these pieces. There's a lot of a couple of pieces here, and there's one additional cut file in there that is for the pattern paper, but today I won't be working with any pattern paper yet. I'm just working with the bare album, and so I haven't included that with what I'm showing here and I'm demonstrating here today. So this one here, you can see I'm having chipboard pieces and then cardstock. So the chipboard, you can see even like, you can see there's lines that I just didn't need anymore, and I made I changed things around and so on. And it doesn't matter because all of this will be covered by the cardstock, so I don't even go ahead and erase anything. You see here, I didn't even bother to, like the edge is quite fringy and stuff, so I didn't even bother to clean up the edges because all of that will be nicely covered. Even if you look closely, you can see that this side is not as large as this side, and honestly I didn't bother because it'll be covered enough that it won't really matter that there is this slight different in size. Okay, so you don't worry about making things nice, because the chipboard is really only there to make this book really, really nice and sturdy. Like I have my autumn book that I showed before, and it has a really nice and sturdy cover, and so the sturdiness comes from putting the chipboard inside. But as you see with this project, there is no there's no view of the chipboard at all, so I don't bother to make the chipboard look pretty. So let's start with, there's this piece that is the binding, and it comes with a bunch of fold lines, and you can see there's fold lines, and I'm not sure if this is properly visible on video, but there's two large folding lines, and then there's a smaller one, and then there's two large again. And so the way that you want things to look is in the end is like this, okay? Because this becomes the binding, where then your three signatures, if you are working with three signatures, will go. If you work with only one signature, obviously you wouldn't need this part. If you work with two signatures, obviously you wouldn't need this part. You would have to adjust the thickness of the spine, which this is the spine. So this is how you do. And so how you fold it is basically you take both sides are identical. You can take it this way or that way, it doesn't matter. And you fold you fold this one up, and then you fold this one back, and then you fold this one up, and you fold this one so that it becomes like a mountain and valleys, right? So, and then it gives you the gusset. There's enough room to put things in between and have it bulky, okay? So, and if you have to, if you realize that yours doesn't look like it, then you can just fold it the other way. It doesn't really matter, okay? So you just want to make sure you have two, and then you fold this one and this one this way, and then you fold the two wider parts. They go together. And then you basically, what you do is you put glue in between these bigger parts, okay? And I can start with that. It doesn't really matter which way you start, but I'm starting by putting glue on this part. And most of the binding, I probably don't need to do the double, but most of the binding, but I'm making sure, because this is the binding. The binding is the part that will be most stressed, okay? It will have the most stress of the entire book. It will be on the binding, and so I want to make sure that when I put the glue down, the glue is covering the entire part very well, because this is the part that I don't want to compromise on, because things will fall apart if your binding falls apart. And so I make sure it really sticks well, and I don't mess around with it too much, so that it really sticks together. And then again, I put glue in this area here, and I only needed to put it on one side, but I make sure I go all the way to the edge, at least the outside. The inside edge is already connected by default because of the fold line, but at the outside edge is where I want to make sure it does have a decent amount of glue on there so that it'll stick very well. And if there's glue coming out, that's not a big problem. It will be behind, right? It will be the covered part. This part of the binding will be all hidden on the back side and will never be seen. At no point after you put this book together will it ever be seen. So, so even if you want to apply generous amounts of glue and it squeezes out from here, it doesn't matter. Getting things a little messy doesn't matter. So then comes the last part of it, and again, I'm making sure the glue goes all the way to the fold line of that outer part. And the inside, it's not so important because it's already held together with the fold. And again, I'm not so concerned about working nice and clean, because this part will be the hidden part of this album, that after you put it together, it will never be seen. So this is the binding, okay? And it will go in the middle of your book. I guess it's the where the spine then will go, okay? All right, I think it's sticking together nicely. Even these parts will be hidden. It will go into the pocket of one of the signatures, as you will see later when I put the whole book together. I will make another video for that. So the binding is done, and I can put it aside for now because right now I need to work on something else. These two pieces, for now, I don't need either, so I put them aside. I will use them in just a little while. So here are the two pieces of the front and back cover and the spine, okay? And again, you see it's not perfectly sized, but I'm not too concerned. So what I care about now is, for one, you want to take, this is the longer side, okay? If we have a measurement, okay? This is 7¼ inches, and this is 6¾ almost. Okay, about so you want to take, so the longer side, it goes basically horizontal, or like a landscape. Okay, so like landscape format, portrait format, and you would know because the width of the spine needs to go to match. Right here it wouldn't match, so that's the easiest way to know which way to put it. Okay, then you want to put it central. I'm trying to make sure it's all on screen here. I hope I'm all on the screen, but you want to make sure that this is centered in the page. It doesn't matter, you don't have to work with a ruler and make it all perfect, but it's it's an estimate. And so when you think you have positioned it right, you can start gluing things down. And you see I leave a small gap between the spine and the two covers, so because that's necessary for the folding. Don't put everything flush together because it will not work. So then I start with one side, and I start to, as generously as I can, apply, but I have to also work quickly because my glue dries really fast, and I don't like to work with those glues that are pretty wet, that take a little longer to dry. So I'm just gonna go and do my work really fast, and I don't want to mess up where I have it already. Okay, I'm gonna clean out the opening up here to make sure the glue can come out just a little faster. So let's see. Okay, that works. And I'm trying to go all the way to the edges so that it sits nicely, and then fill in the center as well a little. Okay. Now I think I have done it. And now, and it doesn't matter if you get glue beyond where the chipboard is, because all of the side will be glued down. So you don't have to be worry about keeping things really, really clean. The part that will be seen is the very edge and the other side of this. Okay, so that is the visible part of the album. And so I put it down, and I hope I have it somewhat centered. Again, you see I don't work with a ruler because I'm not so terribly concerned to make it perfect. Because there's enough of a gap to work with, so that, or there's enough of paper, okay, that will overlap. So I gave it enough space with the paper that it will, we don't have to fiddle with half inches and millimeters and stuff like that. We can just work generously here. Okay, now I put the spine down, and again I'm paying attention that there is a nice gap, and I'm trying, if you see when I fold it over, see how that gap closes, and so that's what I'm trying to see, and this is where the folding will happen eventually anyway. So this gives me about an idea of how much of a distance I need, right? Because the book will close like this, and then it should close this gap, which it does. So I just eyeballed it, and here comes the last part. And I don't know where I got this chipboard from. I think my sister, she's a nurse, and she just, like, for some of their nursing products that they used, she had a whole bunch of these kinds of chipboard sheets, and so I just measure them by hand, because there's only a small strip of chipboard that I have to cut away from this and don't need. And all the rest of the chipboard is just exactly the same, the size that I need for this album. It's perfect. I'm kind of running out of this chipboard, so I'm kind of sad because this is just the right size. And I trim it by hand because my silhouette is like, to cut something so thick is always a little more of a challenge for my silhouette. As I mentioned in one of my other videos, I'm a first generation silhouetter. My silhouette is one of the oldest ones out there. I had it from the very early days. So again, you see here's a gap here. It's not exactly perfect, but I'm not too concerned because the cardstock I'm using is on the thicker side of cardstocks. If I use a thin cardstock, I would be more worried to actually make sure that this is exactly the same size as this. And this happens because I trimmed it by hand. This is why I don't like to trim things by hand, because, and again, one more time, I'm checking here to see if the gap, if it's too tight or not. But I think it closes nicely. And I hope I didn't mess up the back side, because that's the one part of your book that will be seen, especially the spine, because I don't cover up the spine, the outside of it. That's why I use pretty cardstock. But obviously you could still create something to cover up the spine. So anyway, this is the reason why I don't like to work with when I trim things myself. They always turn out differently, and I like when it's kind of perfect, and my silhouette does things perfectly with the cuts. It's exactly the size that you want. So now what I'm beginning, because I'm working with cardstock, and let me just add a little more. I see there's a little gap here and with the glue. Doesn't really matter because the rest of it already sticks down, but just to be on the safe side and to make sure it works, I use a toothpick that already has a lot of glue on there, and put glue underneath there. So now you want to start to bend over all around, but you don't want to just radically move it over, because you don't want to break your paper. So I gently start to do the bending, because this will just go right over the chipboard here, okay? So I just gently move things until it's ready. And I hope it goes all the way. And I don't apply any glue yet, because I'm just doing the folding here. And the edge of the chipboard gives me the boundary of the fold. And I do this with all 4 sides of this. So I don't just go fast and bend it over. I go slowly and slowly stretch the material so that it can fold over. So this is looking nice. And you see here now, you cannot even see at all that one part of the chipboard was bigger or smaller. This is why I said I don't bother so much with that it has 2 slightly different sizes, the 2 cover, because the cardstock can camouflage that. And then I bend this out again and go with this side here. Okay, slowly bending it over. And I do the same here. Again, slowly bending it over the chipboard, and I'm going too fast because I'm creating creases here and things. So the slower you do this, the more perfect it will look. I'm just obviously not wanting to make this video any longer than it is. So then the next thing you want to do is you want to cut the corners, okay? Now, you don't want to go all the way to the corner of this chipboard because then that corner will show, okay? So this is always what gets me a little nervous because I don't want to mess up my materials here, but I'm just, and if I need, I might have to go back and try again, but here you see it actually works pretty fine, okay? And then I would actually use something to put this inside, like I have here the bone folder, so and I just fold it inside, so that way you ensure that the inside chipboard doesn't show. So don't go all the way to the corner, but stay close to the corner, but just don't cut all the way to the corner. So at an angle, all right. All right, I'm going this way, and again, I'm using the bone folder, and I will use the bone folder more, but just for now, so you see here, the corner works. So I push, because it goes beyond the corner of the chipboard, so then I push this side in, and then I cover it with the other side. So I do this with all 4 corners. Just eyeballing it. Most of this will also be covered. It will be covered. So it's not much of a concern. I'm using a bone folder here, you see, and then I bend this over. I'm making sure, excuse me, this corner is flush here, and then, because then it will go mostly flush with the rest of the page here, and you see it, so it becomes a really nice corner. You could use, you know, there are these metal corners and stuff that you can get, and use these to make your corners more like prettier and all that. Sturdier, obviously. But I don't worry so much about these things. So again, okay, I thought maybe I was getting too close to that corner. That would be sad. It happened with one of my albums, one of my first albums that I made of this kind. So this one is getting really, really close. It still just covers, so make sure you never go closer, like depending obviously on the thickness of your chipboard, but don't go closer to the corner than I did here, okay? So this one is a little further away. So this one just barely, it still perfectly does, but barely covers the corner, okay? So this is exactly how I want this to go. And then I use my bone folder to now just really put down the fold. Okay, and again, like I don't usually like when you can see that you used a bone folder on cardstock, but again, most of this will then be covered, so I'm not too concerned about showing where my bone folder scratched along things here. So I'm going with this side. I try to be consistent, really it doesn't matter, but if I put this down first and then this side on top, I will do this, make sure it's on both sides. So not this one first and then this one first and then this one second. I try to be consistent because the corner and the very edge of the book still does show, okay? So that it will be visible all the way once your book is finished. So we've done most of the work of the folding, so it's easy, and obviously it doesn't fold flat because the chipboard is between there. And then I can go and fold the two the two sides, the left and the right side, after I've done the top and the bottom. And I'm being consistent with all sides. And you see it's not perfectly, obviously I didn't center it perfectly, but this I'm not at all concerned about because that will be covered with one more remaining piece. So this corner is a little more bulky, but I'm always scared to cut off too much. So I'd rather have it a little bulky at the corner because then it gives also a little more sturdiness to the corner. So now I'm ready to glue things down. Okay, so I start again and I make sure I go all the way to the, this time, like I think it's more important that the glue really goes here along the fold line, more so than the outer edge, because the outer edge will be covered up again. So the outer edge will have a fixed point, a point where it holds it down. So the more important part, I think, is right around the chipboard edge. And obviously this is what will handle the book, so the cover, right? You will open and close the book and all that. So that's where most of the stress will be on the cover. Obviously the spine, the binding part of it. But I want to make sure things are glued down really, really well here before I move on and start bending things and all that, because I really, really want to make sure that it doesn't come off again. And again, you can see the markings where the bone folder goes along, but all of this, except for the very edge, will be covered, and it won't really, you won't be able to tell. Okay, so I think I have this part done. Then I go to this side because I want to make sure I work consistently. And again, I'm making sure that the fold at the chipboard gets a generous amount of glue. All the other parts I think are less important because they will be covered up again by these other two pieces that I put aside. Okay. Making sure there's enough glue everywhere, and we've already bended nicely, so it is easy work to just get it to stick now. Okay, here is a little where it comes up, so this is where I move all along the edge so there will be no bulk at any point, no air pockets. And I move this around. Okay, it looks like it's sticking. Now I can go to the left or right side. Right now I haven't decided yet what will be top, what will be bottom, until I put the book down, put the signatures in, unless then that becomes important, or if I start to decorate the front and back covers or something, the inside covers, that's when it becomes important. Right now it can be used any which way. Okay, no, I don't want glue on the outside. I still will use patterned paper for most of it, but there will be parts of this red cardstock that will be visible. So again, now I'm using my bone folder, and here this is the one, this is actually the perfect amount of distance, the perfect measure of distance there. This one is a little too, I'm not sure if I should put it in or just cut it off, which one will mess up the corner more. I think I will try and just cut it off and see what it does. Yeah, I think it works. Can't see. All right, so this was actually the perfect amount. There was very little overlap or where I have to fiddle and squeeze things in there. Okay, so it starts to look like a cover or a book. And so I want to make sure that these parts are pushed inside, so I don't really have to cut off anything. I don't like to cut things off in case it weakens something there. And yep, I ensured these things are already on the inside. Okay. All right. So now it's starting to become pretty sturdy, and it does look like a good... I may have to add some more glue underneath here. I may not have put the glue all the way to the edge of this. Now I'm careful, I don't put the glue all the way to this part, because this part will be visible. If there's gluey mess somewhere more in the center, it doesn't matter. But on the edge, there's like maybe like a 0.25 inch edge or so around the edges that I don't want to mess with. So I'm just making sure it really, really sticks well. This is where the overlap here is. If you want to make it perfect, you could make it so it doesn't overlap too much, but this is really such a minor issue that I don't really care. Now comes, you want to be very careful with bending, okay? Because you don't want to break your cardstock. That's the last thing you want to do. And actually I go in here and I score right in between. And I will have to do this again, but I want to start the bending first already. So, and you want to be careful, again, you want to do the bending carefully. So it really helps if you score it first between those two where the gap is. Right there is where you want to score it. And I like to use thick cardstock. Just checking the outside, it's not, hoping it's not breaking. The paper, that would be the worst thing if you break. So I'm very carefully bending things, not to stretch it, the paper too fast, too far. Okay, so, but this is the book, and you don't need to bend any more. I'm not going to bend any more than it's absolutely necessary, because I don't want to stress the cardstock any more than it's already going to be stressed for the rest of its life. Now I'm taking the binding and what you want to do then is to center it right in the middle. Okay, and then you have your signatures, and what I actually probably will end up doing is I will cut some wedge in here to make it easier with, so there's that that pocket where you will place it in the binding, and it might be too tight. So this is where I will have to play around a little, but I don't put it on the original file because I want my pages to sit really, really snug. Okay, so after I have done the front and back, I am putting the chipboard, the binding down, and then you have these two pieces here, right? And they will basically cover up all the rest of the chipboard, but you want to, and they're just designed to actually fill most of the inside. You see, you will not be able to see any more of the chipboard, so keep those, but the binding, you want to kind of center. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You will use the bone folder to and I'm thinking now to just score it to help with the crease. Now I'm thinking whether I don't do this right. So I don't really put glue on this part of the binding. The only place where I will put glue is on these two parts. What this means, if you look at a book, okay, have you ever looked at the spine of a book and you look at the book when it's bound, especially a hard-bound book, you look at a book from the top and you see that there is a gap so that I'm not sure if you can see it, but it comes up this way. That means the pages can lie flat. Right? It gives enough time, space to wiggle around. The pages can lie flat. So that's a difference to many of the crafters that I see. They just put, you know, like double-sided tape everywhere. And I just observed, what do books really look like? Because I noticed a lot of the mini albums that I used to make, you could not open them flat, and this mini album you will not really be able to open it flat because of all the embellishments. I like to add embellishments at least, so all the embellishments it has, and so I just will never be able to put my pages down flat. If I put a flower, a 3D flower somewhere, like clearly I won't be able to close something flat, right? So that's not what I'm talking about, but it will lie flatter if you leave this central part so it can move up and down and move around. And probably you should even leave a little gap here, but I'm hoping that it will just tear away from the background where I glued it on as it's being used as a book, okay? So I put glue on both parts. Now I want to be careful because some of it might be seen, but it's more in the middle, especially on the edges here. So I'm trying to make sure I can see here where the center is. I'm more careful to be center this way and this way. This way I can, left and right, I can move it around because it will be covered, as I showed you earlier. It will be covered. I'm not too concerned for it to be perfect, to be perfectly aligned. And I'm okay to have it pull out a little, okay? So this one pull out a little. I'm not sure if you can see, right? There's that little bend. I'm still wanting to put it a little more. I'm pushing it my way because I feel it has a bigger gap than it has here, but I think now it's pretty even. Again, I'm not working with a measuring tape here. I'm just eyeballing things, and that's good enough for me. And now I'm starting to glue, press it down. I think it's positioned well where I want it. And I should be careful, like, to actually only press down that part that is on on this side of the score line, and to make the back actually still look pretty, because this, it probably will be covered up just because of the thickness of the signature, but it might be visible in certain instances. So if you want to avoid seeing these scratch marks from the bone folder, don't go all the way, especially if you want it to be able to lift still, right? Now I put glue all the way behind here. I put glue all the way to the fold marks. So we'll see. Okay, and then again, once I'm pretty sure that it's stuck down well, your glue might be different than mine and might take longer or shorter to dry. Then again, I'm running the score line that I used before, because that still needs to bend, right? This part still needs to bend. And so I'm paying attention to this part, that it doesn't come off as I'm bending it, because the glue is still pretty fresh on here. The back side still looks wonderful, okay? And I'm doing the same here again. I'm running the score line, and because I scored it before, it's easy to follow. Like my bone folder is not being drawn anywhere else but in that score line that I made before, so it works just fine. So if you have that score line, if you made that score line previously for bending the book, you should be fine with running the bone folder just along that score line again. Okay, and here we have the spine, and you see here, that means it comes off. This is exactly what I want, because it means it can lie more flat, because it has a small bit of wiggle room. So you have to play with it. I think I should have given it a little more of a distance, but I'm pretty satisfied with things as is. Okay, I notice here's a little like an air bubble, but it won't really matter. I think the whole thing looks pretty decent. And now all that's left to do is to put these two papers, and mine might be a little too big actually, because no, it's just perfect. I make the chipboard just a tiny bit smaller, not even a millimeter smaller, and then this one here, it's just a tiny bit smaller, but then I'm aware that the cardstock will bend around it, so that adds another millimeter or something. So I'm trying to see, because this is what will be visible. This is the part of the paper that will be visible, and so I do care. And there's a bend. This got mailed to me and it was all rolled up, and so there is still a little bit of a bend in the paper. Okay, I'm moving this out of the way so I can actually apply the glue properly and fast, because it's drying so fast on me that I don't really have much time. And I don't want to mess up with the glue, and I can just rub off this glue. So when it gets on the side, I can just rub it off, and it will not go on the other side where I really don't want glue to be all over. So there are some parts that it doesn't matter if they are messed up and get glue, but there are some parts of this where you really want to make sure you don't put smear glue on. Okay, I think I have this proper. And now I want to make sure I have an even edge all around. So it's just a tiny bit smaller, which is just perfect. I forgot that I had designed it this way. And well, I may have to pull it more this way, because the fold line, I have to be aware and mindful of the fold line here and see if it's still, so I'm working it just won't wiggle as much anymore. Working with the fold line. And sorry if my head gets in the way. This is the one part of it where I don't really want to mess around too much. Okay, I hope. Now I'm not gonna use my bone folder on this. You see now, because this is the visible part of the album. Depending, if you cover it with paper, then it might not be visible, but if you just use the cardstock as you're covering. So I noticed there is, okay, let me see if it still closes. It's getting close to the edge here, so it's just about right, just how I need it. And I'm gonna put, hopefully, without putting glue all over there on the visible part, I'm gonna, because I had to wiggle around and it's too much glue. So put it underneath here. There is a little, this is also, because it's still connected to the binding, which will be used a lot, so I really want it to sit well and be glued down well. I don't want there to be air pockets and such. So, but I'm also mindful that these are now I'm working on the fully visible parts of the album. Okay, and as you saw me, I didn't use a bone folder on this. I'm just using my hand to put this down. If you don't mind these scratches, then go ahead and use a bone folder. But I do care about such things. I do like when my books look really nice. And again, obviously you wouldn't want to put it down this way where it doesn't fit. So basically the size will already tell you, the size of the cover will tell you how to put down the paper. I don't think that needs any more saying. Okay, I'm gonna move things aside. And if I'm off screen at some points, I apologize. I just it's just how my workspace is. Okay, making sure there's glue everywhere. Again, needing to work fast. And I'm gonna pay more attention now to the score line. I'm just rubbing off some glue from my hands because I will be touching the binding here. And I'm moving away from the score line. And maybe this is a little tip if you want to. So I'm starting with a score line, but I'm seeing that there is less space here. Let me take it off again. Because I hand cut the inside here, it may be just almost too big, but I think it works just right in this case. And once again, I'm not using a bone folder here. This is my personal preference. You can use a bone folder if you find that much easier and you don't care. My personal preference obviously is not to have too many markings. And so you could have cut the edges first before you put down the spine. Makes it easier, I guess. But, oh, what's there? Okay. So here we go. This is the cover. Let me start to show what I mean. So I'm putting a wedge here. Okay, and obviously my scissors don't go all the way, but it worked. Okay, and I'm doing this on both sides, but not too much. But it depends on how my album was glued together. That is different with every person. Like, you know, sometimes you glue more space in that pocket. So I didn't want to provide the cut file this way, you can do this yourself afterward. And you see, it's not so difficult to actually do it this way, even when it's already in the book. And so now you have your signature, and there is that pocket, right? Here is that pocket, and the signature slides right in all the way, you see? And that creates, and you can see how it lies flat. Obviously now it's not filled with any papers and anything, but it can lie really flat because I didn't glue down the center here, okay? So this is how the covering works of this, or the book cover works. And I hope this was useful for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Consider subscribing, and thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day. Bye.